Hey everyone, I have no idea if anyone is out there. I figured I need to wax my arms before I head out of town, and I thought maybe I would just go ahead and do it live for anyone. So I'm gonna go ahead and get going, and you guys let me know if you tune in or if there's anyone who's got any questions. I'm gonna start with my, hey, thanks for joining, guys. I'm gonna start with my Starpil, the gel prep on my arms. I love to use this one when I'm working on the body. And my arms are kind of on the dry side right now, so this is like a perfect prep. It hydrates them really nicely. It doesn't leave them like greasy or, like have any sort of like film on your arms, but it definitely does give them a nice little light hydration, which is awesome. So I've been waxing my arms for a really, really long time, so it's hard for you guys to be able to see the hair, but I've let them go. But I'm headed out of town this weekend, you guys, so I wanted to wax them up, and I figured I would go ahead and put them live for you. So shoot me any questions if you guys have any. Like I said, I just started with that Starpil, the gel prep, and I'm just drying them off just to make sure they don't have any like additional moisture or anything on them, because that of course always gets in the way. So I have 2 pots right now that are prepped and ready to go. You guys can see them in the background. They are my Starpil Blue, the film, the polymer mix with a bit of the Star Soft, and then I have my Star Soft pot in the back. So because I have such fine hair, this blue mix sometimes won't get all the little baby hairs, so when I do my cleanup, I'll go over to my Starpil Star Soft. So let's get going. Hopefully you guys can see. Let me know if for some reason the angle isn't right. I like to have my setup kind of all ready to go over here. I have a drawer of my big sticks. It's an acrylic drawer, so you can't see the dividers in them, but I always love to work from one drawer. It keeps everything really sanitary that way. So that's what my setup is. I'll put that back and we'll get going. So I'm going to start with the blue, the mixture, and just get a nice scoop. And I always start in the same place. I always start on the inside of my arms. It's my pattern that I always use. So we're gonna get going on the middle here. I'll back up so you guys can see. And this is my mixture, so it does have some of the Star Soft in it, but it's a bit heavier on the blue right now because I was doing some waxing on legs and arms that had a lot more hair. So I went ahead and loaded up my pot with mostly blue. This ratio is probably like 70-30. So dries up real nice and fast, but still has a fair amount of pliability. You can see that it's still sticky. So a lot of people are having issues with their strips breaking, and this is what's so awesome about adding the Starpil to the blue. You can see I'm still stretching that strip. So that makes a really, really big difference. If you guys are having any difficulty with your strips breaking, try adding some of that Star Soft into it, and you might get a little bit more pliability out of it. So now you're gonna see me do this live with my left hand. I'm gonna go ahead and move over to my right arm. God, you guys, the only other time I've ever gone live was when I was with Liz. This feels really funny to do it by myself. Sometimes these impromptu things are the best, right? Okay, so sets up really nice and fast on the arm. I can go back and I can touch it. It does have the Star Soft in it though, so just keep in mind that it's gonna take a teeny bit longer. If I go to try and pull this now, the lip may not come up all the way, but we're doing pretty good there. So we can pull, and it picks up, I don't know if you guys can see, all the little blonde hairs that are on the inside of the arm there. So that's good stretch in there. Brittany, I totally applied it towards my elbow, and then I moved it in that same direction. I think I just wasn't thinking, and I was looking backwards in the camera, so that was my bad. Luckily though, on the inside of the arm right here, you really don't have all that much hair, or at least I don't, so that's not gonna work against me. I do like to do cleanup strips in that direction though, so once I've actually removed all of the hair in the direction of growth, I'll go back and I'll do some cleanups. So there's always that option for you after you've done your standard strips. So I've done the inside of my arm right now, and I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna now focus on kind of the rounded side of the forearm right here. I'm gonna lay this strip going straight down towards my elbow. Arms can be really frustrating to wax. A lot of times you get people, when you're waxing their arms, they kind of like force their arms over in the direction that they see hair or they think that you need it, and so they fight you sometimes when they're waxing. So it can be a little bit challenging. Not to mention, you're looking right at the person that you're waxing, kind of like I'm looking at you guys right now. So, and pull straight up. Should be able to see some more of those little blonde hairs. Maybe not, maybe it's a little too hard, but I did have that dry skin there. So we're gonna go over to the other side. Waxing arms was always really hard for me when I was a new waxer because I was always really intimidated by working with people that were watching me, and they were always finding little hairs, and I was always really stressed out about making sure that I went back and I picked up all of those little hairs. And so when I really got confident waxing arms, I got to a point where I would just focus on the flat plane as much as possible that was in front of me. So instead of really worrying about how round the arm is, I was always trying to really just focus on the flat areas when I would adjust my my guest's arms. And I always knew that there was going to be spots that I had to go back and double check to see, if there was hair there. And my motto is always, if I find it on one arm in one spot, it's going to be on the other arm in the other spot. So I don't like to do a lot of hunting and pecking. I just go and I lay the strip there. And that always helped me to feel a little bit more confident while I was working with people and waxing their arms. I would just tell them that I would absolutely be getting back to that spot, that I hadn't completed my pattern yet, and that I would give them an opportunity to check and see if there were any hairs left over. Because I did. I always would tell my students when I was teaching that I think it's really important to make sure that you give your guests an opportunity to check their arms, because people who arm wax usually are really particular about what they see, and so you want to make sure that it's good. So most of the time when I'm doing cleanup on one arm, I'll have guests look at the other arm and tell me if they see anything, so that I can go ahead and, once I'm finished on the arm that I'm working on, bop over to the other one and touch up any spots that they see. That way, when guests go out and they leave your space, you've already given them an opportunity to take a peek at the arm and see if you missed any hairs. And if they didn't catch it and you ask them to look, then they can't really be upset with you. So I'm always a big fan of really making sure that you're giving them an opportunity to look. So moving back over to this arm here, really moving that wax down towards my elbow, and then closing my strip, coming back. Making sure that your edges are always as clean as possible is really helpful. Of course, I'm waxing with my left arm here, and so it's not always the easiest thing to do, but you're always shooting for nice uniform edges like that, so that when you pull your strips, that you have less breakage or less fraying, because when you have strips that split on you, you're usually going to have broken hairs, and we don't want that. So pinching and removing, and that's how elasticy that still is. So we're just going to tack that up. If you ever have wax that's left behind, make sure that you don't just keep pulling. I like to stop and realign and pull again from the very beginning, but that's just a personal preference. So I've taken care of the inside of my arms right here. I came straight down, and then I twisted out to get that kind of meaty forearm portion of the muscle, or the arm, kind of right there. So now I'm gonna go and I'm gonna work on the tops. Normally on the tops of my arms, I would lay strips that just come straight down. Because I've been waxing for so long, they don't really have a ton of direction. But because I'm doing this live with you guys, I'll lay what I call tiger strips, so that you can see kind of how I would approach someone's arm if they had really thick hair, or if they had never waxed their arms before. Hey guys, thank you all for tuning in. Hey Kelly! Oh, how fun. All right. So first tiger strip, I would lay and push over the arm, making sure that I'm staying on the edge of my stick, and then you make your lip on that side. Of course, I'm doing this in the camera. There we go. We do this because we want to pull as many hairs as possible from the root. You don't want them to break. And a lot of times I find that newer waxers struggle to get these arm hairs waxed out versus just breaking. And so these strips that go with the contour of the arm make a really big difference in helping to pull those hairs out. Again, always really trying to make sure that your edges are as clean as possible. And we leave space between them, the strips that is, so that when I come back, I can lay another strip here and another strip here. And because I've overlapped now, I know that I've always covered the whole area. Gotta do a face and how I watch the replay. Bye, Callie. All right, so here I am. I'm gonna pinch this lip. I'm gonna lift. If it breaks like that, we squeeze it back together, and we're gonna do that in multiple pulls. So maybe you can see, just because I'm so white there, that hair removal. And we're gonna do the same thing here, pinch, and over. You never wanna do those all in one, because if you do that whole thing, then you are more likely to peel. I don't know about you guys, but arms have a lot of difficulty with lifting. So you always want to make sure that you're doing any of those pulls that go over and arch that way. Same thing when you're working on like a bikini or a thigh, something along those lines, that you pull in more than one pull. So now I'm going back in the space in between, staying on the edge of my stick, making that lip, closing that strip. And if I have wax left, I can make it a little bit wider, but always trying to get as clean of an edge as possible. I'm gonna pull my glove down a little bit here so I can get more onto my wrist, because we wanna make sure that we're getting all of those hairs. My recommendation when I do arm waxes is always to ask your guests also about whether or not they want their hands and fingers done. For me, I always like to include that, because I always feel like it's really weird that you're sending people out with like hand mittens, little hair mittens on their hands. So if they want their hands done, I always like to know that at the beginning, because I don't know about you guys, but doing fingers and hands is not always the easiest thing. So I like to know at the very beginning if that's something that I'm gonna have to tackle, and it helps me allot my time a little bit differently. So here we are again. We're gonna pinch and lift, and that whole lip came up. I'm gonna come up, and then I'm gonna come down. And it really helps to pick up those hairs that are growing at a little bit more of a direction over the arm that way. And we're gonna do the same thing here. Multiple pulls. Usually you're still gonna have to go back and you're gonna have to do a straight strip. Just kind of, it is what it is with the arms. And so I'll come back and do a straight strip on that one after I've done a straight strip on this arm. And again, I wanted to show the differences because I've been waxing for a long time, and so you can do a straight strip on hairs that don't have that same, that directional growth. Do you guys like doing arms? I don't know. It was always a service that I didn't love doing until I got a lot more confidence in my waxing. And I know a lot of estheticians like to do it with soft wax, and so this is really different to be learning how to do it with hard wax. So that can be a little bit more challenging. So I'm gonna let that set up a little bit longer. There's a lot more hair under this particular strip, so it's not like it's a clean-up strip, and I just wanna make sure that it's not too tacky, because remember, this is my Starpil blue polymer, the beads, with some of the Star Soft in it, because I like for it to have a little bit more of that kind of tackiness, especially when I'm picking up hairs that are a little bit more fine. So I'm gonna pinch, and notice I always try and leave a really good lip at the end of the strip right there. That's a really important piece of being able to remove a strip without hurting your guests. I'm not a fan of tacking. I'm not a big fan of flicking or rolling. All of that picks up hair, and it's kind of like you're waxing. So like you do with most of your pulls, they should be firm and relatively quick. And so that's why the lip for me is always really important. So I will squeeze, and I'll call that a release. I like to pull that up from the skin. And then normally I'd have an extra set of hands, and I'd be pulling that strip straight up. So I'm gonna see if you guys can see the hairs on this one. I don't know if you can. You see those? Hello in Brazil. Oh my goodness. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm so glad that there's some people out there. I know this is kind of a random time, but like I said, I figured I had to do an arm wax, and so I'd do it live. Totally impromptu, unplanned. So now I'm going to go back to this one, and I'm going to lay this strip. I'm going to do this one straight because I did the tiger strips on the other one. So we're going to do this one. I don't need quite as much wax because I've already picked up most of those hairs. I'm going to go straight down. So just a couple of different approaches for dealing with arms. And again, always making sure to leave yourself a really nice lip. Oh my gosh, from Barbados. Hello, in Norway. Oh my gosh, thank you guys for tuning in. What time is it there? I guess it makes more sense for you guys out there, huh? All right, so straight strip on this arm after I've already done those tiger stripes. And then I can go back to this one and I'll actually just do a cleanup strip because I did that one straight strip. And then I get to move on to my elbows and you get to see how I do those on myself. All right, so I pinched and I released that lip. See how uniform the shape is there? Super important to be able to pinch from the center and lift, and it releases that whole lip from the arm. Okay. And we're gonna pull upward. Some of it's split, so I'm gonna push it back together, and then I'm gonna keep pulling straight upward. All right, look at that, smooth arm, a little bit of wax. I don't stress about those things because I still have some cleanup strips to do and I haven't done my elbows yet, so, all right. And then I'm gonna do, my last one on this one's gonna be a cleanup strip, but I'm gonna wait to do that until I do cleanup strips on everything. I don't like to do cleanup strips before I actually finish my entire pattern. So let's get to the elbows. This should be interesting. I normally do these by myself and look ridiculous by myself, but now I have an audience. Okay. So are you guys using hard wax when you do full arms, or do you use soft wax? Have you tried doing hard wax? So elbows can be really tricky because kind of like with knees, obviously it's a curved edge, but it's also a really super dry area of the body. Using hard wax, nice. Ugh, soft wax is so sticky. So this is a really dry area of the body, so it has a tendency to totally soak up a lot of the moisture that's in the wax, and so you can't let these sit too long, and I find that if you try and cover too much area with them, then they're going to break regardless. So I like to split the elbow in half, so I do kind of the front half and then I do the back half. But the technique is all the same and we're always staying on the edge. So I'm going to pinch to release it. All right, if I can get my edge up there, here, and then keep it nice and bent and then pull back. And that tends to pick up those hairs really nicely. This wax is Starpil. Yes, this is Starpil Wax. This is the Starpil, this is the blue. Let me turn the camera. This is the Starpil blue. And I mixed the Star Soft in with it, so this is a little bit tackier than if it was just the blue alone. And then I also have my other pot over here, and this is the Star Soft just alone. So those are the two that that I've got prepped right now. I'll use the Star Soft to do areas where probably cleanups. You know, if I need to pick up some really short hairs or something that's just being really stubborn, that's where I would use that one. So yes, Starpil is my fave from Mexico. Hi Mexico. My Star Soft right now is at 85. So again, temperature is always a really big question that I get from people, but you have to consider kind of your working environment. Like my blue right now is on 75. It's got that mixture of the Star Soft, so that I feel like the melting temp is even lower than when you mix the two. But I have a big air vent that's in here that kicks a lot of air into me, and so it probably keeps it a little bit, cooler in here. So just consider kind of what you need in your room and in your space, because it can be so different. One of the biggest things that I had talked about was that mixture that I use, and people wonder why, and it's because I just don't have a ton of humidity in my space, and so the blue alone cracks and dries on me more so than it doesn't. And so this was the solution, was to mix a little bit of that Star Soft in. So play with it. I mean, that's how you learn, right? You have to mess around with your waxes. So this is gonna look really awkward, but now I'm gonna try and get the back side of my elbow. And again, elbows, knees, they tend to be super dry. So you wanna make sure that the strip is pretty thick and that it covers just enough, but not too much. Look at that. All right, you guys, sorry. They are not all pretty strips. I told you, this is kind of what happens when you go live, right? So back side of my elbow strip. Sometimes you can hold your arm this way and you can do that side of the elbow too. And again, don't let these dry for too long. I find on knees and on elbows, if you let them dry for way too long, then they're just gonna crack on you, okay? So sometimes I push into the wax with my hand and you can pull from another direction. And there's that dry spot right there. Press in and pull. A lot of times we just keep pulling on the strips and it doesn't help us at all because wherever it's stuck on you, it's just gonna stay stuck on you. So press back into the wax and then remove it. So that was a poorly done elbow, but it's done. Let's try the other one with my left hand. Does anybody have any other questions? Again, this was totally impromptu. So let's do this elbow here. Oh man, that is so ugly, you guys. I'm so sorry. So ugly. Okay, so one of the things that I was just talking about though was making sure that all of my strips always have a lip on them, because if you don't have a lip on your strips, they are going to be much harder to pull. What's your go-to for Brazilians? Oh, girl. I don't think I will ever do another Brazilian wax without the Star Soft. It honestly is just my favorite. I use the Star Soft for the entire front of the Brazilian. On the back strips though, I usually shift over to either my blue mixture or the pink wax. It just really depends on the hair, the amount of hair that I see that I need to pick up. Regular guests who've been waxing pretty frequently on a regular basis, I probably would use the pink wax. The pink wax sets up very quickly, it picks up finer hairs, and I just find that it does a great job kind of cleaning up those back strips, you know, quickly. And then if it was somebody who was newer and had not been waxed before and I wasn't really sure kind of, you know, how their hair on the back strips was going to respond, I would probably use this. I'd use the blue mixture. But for the entire front, I just love the Star Soft. The first time that I used it, it was a little bit of a learning curve. You know, you have to make sure that you understand kind of how long to let it set up. It does take a little bit longer to dry, but for me it picked up so many more hairs. It was so good. It really just shrink wrapping everything that was there, and when I went to go pull those strips, I was blown away. So for me, the Starpil Star Soft is where I go. And I do think it's great on coarse hairs, although I don't think of Star Soft as a wax just for coarse hairs or fine hairs. I think it just works really well in general, and it's about how you use it, not so much the fact that it's what area or what type of hair, because I use it on the face, I use it on Brazilians, I use it on underarms, I've used it on arms, I've used it on legs, so it's just kind of one of those things. Once you start to learn how your waxes behave, then you can start to apply them in a lot of different ways. I don't like to get stuck in one of those things where we say the pink is just for this and the blue is just for this and the Star Soft is just for this. So I like to use them all you know, when I feel appropriate. I don't know if that helps or not, but in general, my go-to is always the Star Soft for Brazilians. And it also, because it doesn't have any dyes in it and no fragrance, and I just know that people are gonna react well to it. So that's where I always go. That's where I start with my Brazilians. How much time do you need for Brazilian wax? If I'm just waxing somebody and I get right on it, 15 minutes. I have the luxury now of being able to take my time. I'm not waxing anymore. Sorry guys, now I'm just answering questions. Let's do another awkward elbow strip. But really truly, once you kind of have someone and you see them on a regular basis, 15 minutes for me for Brazilian is really all that it should take. I have a very, how are we gonna do this one? Let's do this side. I have a pattern that I use. I follow that pattern, and I don't change that because I know that the strips that I'm gonna lay are gonna take care of the hair the way that I need them to. So I don't know, my approach is pretty much always the same, and I just go for it. So 15 minutes, but when I'm talking and multitasking like I am right now, certainly 20, maybe 25 minutes, but really the waxing is usually done in pretty short order, about 15 minutes or so. So this is my second awkward elbow strip right here. So I always like to do that first half, and then I do the second half. And then essentially for my half arm, I have finished my arm pattern, and I'm gonna go back and I'm just gonna be doing touch-ups. When I use Star Soft Brazilians, it takes forever. Maybe adjust your pattern a little bit, kind of. I don't know if I think Denise, right? Denise, I don't know if you are using a particular pattern, like how you're approaching the Brazilian. The goal, of course, is always to get more than one strip down at a time. So don't ever just be sitting and waiting on a strip. Make sure that you are kind of adjusting your pattern. And that was a big learning curve for me. I did have to do that. Hello. I had to adjust my pattern when I started using the Star Soft because it didn't set up the same way. Oh no, I'm a slow waxer. That's okay, slow waxing is okay. Speed in my mind should never be the focus, and I know that sounds crazy. I'm gonna do some touch-up strips with the Star Soft so you guys can see me work with that a little bit. I know that sounds crazy, but I really believe that you have to focus on technique first, and if you focus on technique, that will help override, not override, sorry, okay, multitasking, not so good at it right now. Focusing on technique is gonna allow you to be a good waxer, and that naturally, if you have good technique, will give you speed. If you're focusing on speed, it's the wrong thing to focus on, at least in my opinion. I really feel like making sure that you're holding the stick right, using the wax properly, laying really pretty nice strips, all of those things, know your pattern, do all of that. You will naturally become much faster if you focus on those things. Good, yeah, multiple strips at a time. How many blue film wax you spend for I'm guessing you're wondering about time. For blue film wax for legs and for bikini. For a full leg, I always set aside about a half an hour, and then the bikini 15 minutes. When I do the two together, I can work a little bit faster because I go straight from the leg into the bikini or the Brazilian. So for the full leg and the Brazilian, I would do about 45 minutes. I think that's what you're asking. I'm so sorry. Okay, so I've let this set up a little bit longer. Again, pinch and release. And then I'm gonna pull this strip down, and this is my cleanup strip, so that's why I'm going the opposite direction. And I was a little thin in one spot there. What pattern do you use for your Brazilians? It's hard to explain a pattern. It's really a very visual thing. It's just a particular way that I like to put my strips down so that it continues to allow me to move around the body as I'm using the wax. I know that's not very helpful, but I always recommend get your friends on the table and ask them to, even if they're just laying there, even if you're not waxing them, to kind of think about how you could be able to lay strips on them and then create a pattern. I kind of work from the outside in on my bikinis. It's so hard to talk about the pattern without giving you guys a visual, so. And I'm just using the Star Soft here, and I'm just doing some cleanup strips on myself. Let's see, any other questions? No, not now. Do you guys like to tune in to people who are live? I don't know, like I said, the only other time I ever did this was when I was with Liz. So I don't know if people like to do see live sessions. I guess it's kind of a fun way to answer questions. You can see it's a thin strip. It still sets up pretty quickly. I was asking how many grams. Oh my gosh, I wish I knew. I don't measure out my waxes when I'm working because I just keep my pots full. So these are the 5.5 pound wax pots from Starpil. On a full leg, I mean, I guess I would probably drain this pot about halfway, I'm guessing. And then the Star Soft, because I would be using that for the Brazilian, I don't know, that's so hard to gauge. I don't know, I'm so sorry, I don't even know how to say that one, like in terms of grams. I've just never measured it before, so I don't really have a great way to address that one. I'm so sorry. Oh, great, yay! Yeah, well, lives are fun when they're educational. I don't know what people do otherwise, I just sit here and talk. So, what do you suggest for ingrown hair serum? What do you finish your waxing up with? Oh, okay, awesome. So, I like to finish my service depending on kind of what I have in front of me and what's going on. I have a couple products. A couple different options. So, I use fur oil and I really love this product. If I have someone who's coming in and they are a newer waxer, skin responds really nicely, no challenges, yay, fur oil, hi Crystal. The fur oil is beautiful, antibacterial, antifungal, soothing, hydrating for the skin. Really awesome product. I love this stuff. This was the first and only thing that I was, carrying in here. I just recently started using a product from Zandy K, their deck polish and their deck scrubs, and I really like those. But those are for a different, service. I like to finish with this fur oil. Super supportive, nutritive to the skin. There is the basic fur oil, and then there's also the fur oil concentrate. And so that one is definitely something that is a take-home at-home product that you would use. But I love to finish up with the fur oil. There are sometimes where I feel like someone may need a little bit more aggressive if they are prone to breakouts and ingrowns right after their services. I know this seems pretty intense, but I do like to use the clarifying toning pads, salicylic and glycolic, 1% of both, and it makes a really big difference. Oh, hi honey. Hey, Starpil. It makes a great difference in the way that the skin responds, and I feel like even though you get a little bit of a tingle, it helps to treat those ingrowns and any potential breakout kind of right away. I also really love to finish up my services with people who struggle with ingrowns with high frequency. It makes a significant difference in killing the bacteria and really allowing the area to heal right after a wax. The other thing that I like to finish with is the Starpil Star Soft Post Emulsion. Again, very hydrating for the skin, soothing. It has the tamanu oil in it. For someone who really has zero challenges with their skin, maybe a little bit on the dry side, but just wants something, I need to finish up and just really hydrate the skin and soothe it, this is really awesome. I like it a lot. I saw someone had asked about whether or not I ever have anybody who has a breakout from a full face. I had one break out with the pink wax. I've not had anybody break out with a full face directly from any particular, wax products. I usually use the Star Soft on the full face, so that would be the direction that I would go. Again, no dyes, no perfumes. It's meant for more sensitive areas, so I would definitely target a full face. I would go with the Star Soft first and foremost. As I was just mentioning, if you have any concern about your person, breaking out after a full face wax, which is pretty typical, you need to know, think about what you've cleansed and prepped their face with. Think about what you finished the service with, and then any particular treatment that you want to use afterwards. High frequency is excellent to be able to use on the face after doing a full face wax. It's really great. I think there's just so many different factors that you have to consider when you're waxing a full face. So look at what you are prepping with, look at what you're finishing with, make sure you removed all the makeup from your guest's face and really leave them with a nice clean slate afterwards. Sometimes people break out more in areas where you've gone back and you've laid multiple strips, you've kind of over exfoliated the skin there, we've traumatized it a little bit. And sometimes people break out almost more like a histamine reaction after they've had a full face wax. And so that would be something where someone had lots of all of those little white, what that looks like pimples all over the face, but it's really much more of like a histamine reaction. So it kind of depends on what you're seeing afterwards. Like I said, maybe try going with your Star Soft and try that. It's meant for really sensitive skin areas where you want to make sure that you have no reaction. So hopefully that helps. My pleasure. Can I save it? I'm going to try and save it for you guys afterwards. I'm going to keep waxing. I'm going to lay some more strips. We'll see if there's any more questions that come out. So I did some touch-up strips over here on this arm. I'm looking and I'm not seeing anything. So I'm going to go to the next arm. Now remember, on this arm, I had only done the one straight strip, so I'm going to come back in with the Star Soft, and I'm going to do a thin strip on my arm. Make sure that this dries, but it's still nice and thin, so it shouldn't be too long. And I'm one of those people, like, I get hives when I wax, and that's normal. It is what it is. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Sometimes people freak out about seeing a hive, and I don't stress about it. I get one or two kind of right here in the crease of the arm for some reason. This seems to be a more sensitive spot for me, but that's cool. So as you can see, I'm using the Star Soft in a lot of different places. Someone else was asking about my temperature of my wax. So my blue, the Starpil, and my Star Soft mixture, that's what's in this big pot right here. I keep this one right now at about 75. And then my Star Soft alone, right now I took it down just a notch, so it's about probably like 82, 83 degrees. So again, I have a lot of air pumping into this room now that I'm in my new big space, and so I have a lot of direct air that affects the pots. So just consider any differences that you may need to in your room. If your room runs hot, you may need to even be even cooler with your pots. I like to stir my wax quite a bit to kind of keep the consistency, so consider all those things when you're making adjustments in your wax pots, okay? So I like to use the Star Soft like this on the arms if and when I can to pick up any of those baby fine hairs, because you know that people are going to go sit in their car and they're going to get there and they're going to look and they're going to be looking for any little hair. So like I said at the beginning, I always like to make sure that all of my guests have an opportunity to look at their arms in front of me while they're working, because then I feel that way if we've had a chance to both look at it, then they can't go out and be upset with me if there's hairs left over afterwards because they looked and they weighed in. So I see kind of one little strip right here. Arms are hard, you guys. Arms are all round and we're using this flat stick, and it can be challenging to pick up all of those hairs. So I'm a big fan of making sure that we're educating people. How does the Starpil ingrown spray work? That's a really good question. I'll get to that in just a second. So I would talk about it before, but like focusing on just the plane of the arm that's in front of you is super important when you're waxing, or at least I feel like when you're waxing. We tend to have this habit to make massive strips, and those massive strips on arms will cover these edges, and so then you go to pull them and they peel back, and that's always really risky because you're more prone to lifting and then probably breaking. So, to be really honest, I've not used the Starpil hair puller product, so I should probably do that. I should probably look into that product and see, what's in there and kind of how it works. I don't know if anybody's had any experience with it. Please share with me. I would love to hear about it. I'm in California and my blue Starpil is at 50. Seems low, but has a good consistency. Look, I tell people, I'm like, that's why when everybody always asks about what temperature I keep my pot at, it's like a totally personal thing. So if 50 works for you, girl, keep it at 50. Again, my room has, different airflow. So when doing hands and fingers, I have a hard time picking up fine hairs. Any tips? Everybody has a hard time. It's kind of the roll action. You do kind of get better results when you roll. And I'm so not a fan of rolling anywhere else on the body. But when you are working on the fingers and the toes, oh my gosh, I will tell you, this mixture of the blue and the Starpil has hands down been the easiest way for me to pick up fingers and toe hair. You can ask my poor husband. I had to strap him to the table this weekend. And so that really helped, actually, the tackiness of this combination. And what I mean by rolling is that when you you know, work in small sections, like roll, you know, apply it on one knuckle and then another one, and then simply just roll it up. It doesn't sound great, it doesn't feel great, but it's one of the easiest ways to actually be able to remove that hair. People's fingers and toes tend to be quite cold, so it dries a lot faster, and those funny little hairs, man, they're stubborn. So that's always something that I like to talk about with other waxers too. Like if anybody has any great, you know, secret tips, that's always my thing. But I'm telling you, so far, this has been my favorite tool to pick up the fingers and the toes. The hands themselves, on the top of the hands, I always like to kind of share, make sure that you're going in multiple directions. So I like to lay a strip coming down from the top this direction, strip coming down from the top in this direction, and then I like to apply from thumb towards the hand. That really helps to make sure to remove all of those hairs. So that's good to know. My clients always freak out when I roll on the fingers. I'll tell them it's the best way. Oh, it is. I'm sorry. It's the only way that I know to tell you at this point to pick up those little baby fine hairs. So, all right. So at this point, this is when I would normally tell somebody to kind of take a peek at their arms and let me know if they're seeing anything. As I mentioned at the very beginning, I'm one of those people that believes that if I've left hair on this arm over on this side, I've probably also left hair over on this arm on this side. So I don't even hunt and peck, because then you spend all this time doing this and then they're staring at the arms. If you saw hair on this side, go lay a strip and then go to the other arm and lay the strip. I just don't even look. To me, it seems really silly. So I have found one small area right here, which is super typical. It's on the curve of the arm right there, and that's where I have a little bit. So I'm gonna assume that I have some on this arm too, and I'm just gonna go right back to it. And I could be using the blue, honestly, at this point, because it has that mixture in there. It probably would be just fine, but I was using the blue before, so I figured I would just use the Star Soft for you guys here. We talked a little bit also before about kind of when to use the different waxes, and I hate for anybody to get really caught up in that, because you can really use these waxes whenever you feel like it's appropriate. But the Star Soft obviously is a little bit tackier and provides you with something that picks up some really kind of short, more stubborn hairs. And gosh, I wish I need to get a macro lens, I think that's what they're called, to show you guys some of these hairs. Shoot. But the Star Soft is really helpful in a lot of different places. If you're ever working on somebody who has really stubborn upper leg hair, let me tell you, it really picks up those hairs. And like I said, I'm just going straight to this arm, because I'm going to assume that if I had it on that one, I'm going to have it on this one. Do you use thin strips when doing Brazilians, or do you make them more thick? A lot of that depends on whether or not they've been waxed before and the kind of hair that they have. You know, so much about waxing is being able to identify those little things while you're in the room, you know, with your clients. Obviously, on those first strips through, like if this is a new wax or somebody who has really thick hair, the strips are going to be thicker. I need more wax to be able to really get what I call leverage on the hairs. I need a thicker wax strip that is going to really shrink wrap around that hair and really let it set up so that I have no problems removing those hairs. You know, when you have more hair and you have thicker hairs, they're going to create almost like a matting in your wax. And so if you've not used the right amount of wax, your strips are gonna break. And that is like the most awful feeling as a waxer when you have a strip that breaks. So my suggestion is you can always go back and get more wax. So if you pull a certain amount of wax from your pot, and you feel like when you turn around and you lay that strip. So let's say that you turn around and you laid a strip with this amount of wax. I don't know what strip it was, but you lay the strip down and you realize that you don't have enough wax in your on your stick. Go back and get more. It's okay to add to your strip. Yeah, it might slow it down a little bit in terms of like the dry time, but you know, you'd rather not risk pulling a strip and having it break and then break hairs and be so much more uncomfortable for your guest. I would rather just go get more wax. So I guess, you know, my strips on the Brazilian tend to have a pretty uniform thickness to them until I get to my cleanup strips. When I get to my cleanup strips, I make those much thinner. I kind of pull them in steps just to make sure to pick up all of those extra hairs, and that's just kind of my cleanup technique. So, hi Danae. Oh. So Thicker for the first passes, definitely. Thinner on my cleanup strips. Again, I pull them slightly differently, but the approach is just a little bit different. So again, all of these waxes have their own little tendencies, and so you kind of have to know how they behave. They all have different personalities. But the Star Soft definitely is great at picking up both the fine and the thick. Do I use powder? Girl, Denise, I love all these questions. These are amazing. I am not a powder fan. I don't do powder, really. I have a super small bottle of powder over here that, if I'm being really honest, I think I got it when I first went to SD school. I am not a fan of powder because I feel like it creates an additional layer. For me, the point of using something like powder would be to remove any sort of moisture, but I don't need something else left behind. So in my mind, and my students can attest to this because I bring the story up every time, if you guys ever watched Friends, there's an episode where Ross is wearing leather pants and he goes to the bathroom, can't get his pants back up, and he starts putting powder and all this kind of stuff in his pants, and then he can't get them up because it's created this film. And to me, that's what powder does. It doesn't actually help me lay my strips, and it doesn't help me pick up the hairs any better. My goal is to remove the moisture. So I'm a big fan of simply using my 4x4s. Yes, I'll go through a lot more 4x4s if I have someone who's perspiring a lot on my table, but I still can move pretty quickly by just dabbing the moisture off the skin and laying my strip right away than having to deal with powder on the body. I just was never taught to use a ton of powder, and so I never taught people to use a lot of powder. So far, I've been in good shape. So the only thing that I've ever really used the powder for, to be really honest, is in my gloves. My number one rule is to never take off your own gloves. Like, if you need to put another pair of gloves on, put them on over the top, because that's the easiest thing to do. And if you get stuck to your strips a lot, put a little bit of oil on your gloves. Perfect. But if I've ever had my gloves really break on me and I just cannot get them back into another set of gloves, I put the powder on them. That's about what I've used the powder for. So, do you think that using roller wax is more economic than hard wax for big body parts? I'm just not a fan of strip wax in general. I know a lot of people like to use the strip wax, like roller wax, on larger body parts, and I think that's a comfort thing. From a cost perspective, I think it is a bit more expensive to use hard wax, but for me, I prefer the result, and I prefer using it as an esthetician because I don't worry as much about lifting or side effects with skin reactions. So for me, I have been using hard wax on larger body parts, arms, legs, backs, for a number of years now, and I still go back to hard wax. When I was teaching, I had to teach those areas with soft wax, and I remembered why I liked hard wax. But from a money standpoint, I think things have changed a lot, where hard wax is a lot more affordable now. It used to be a lot harder to use large amounts of hard wax, and I think because companies like Starpil now have kind of come to the table with such great product, and they're very cost effective. So I think, for me, it's a lot easier to make that decision and say, this is how I want to perform the services. But I know a lot of estheticians who really prefer to use a strip wax, and that's perfectly fine. If that's your comfort zone and that's what you like to use, go for it. By all means, it's about getting the job done well. So I finished my arms, you guys. I'm gonna put some oil on them, and I do like to finish my arms and my legs. The Starpil, the post wax oil. It's a cool green bottle. And if somebody had any sort of roll sensitivity or reaction, then I would be using the Star Soft version of the post wax oil. And this just gives a really nice light hydration. Save my life, the large wax sticks. You can actually get them on Amazon. They're called extra large tongue depressors. If you want to shoot me a DM, I can give you that information. Maybe in US more economic, but in Mexico more expensive. Yeah, I know that. I know it can be more expensive. But I also charge more because I feel like I'm giving a better result. So people know that they're going to get hard wax and that they're going to pay a little bit more, but they get a better result. I feel like waxing with hard wax gives a longer, smooth skin than with strip wax. At least for me it does. So, Okay, well, I did my arm, you guys. This was fun. This was kind of a random Wednesday afternoon. I don't know if anybody else has any other questions. I don't think so, but thanks for tuning in, everybody, and let me know if this was something that you really liked, if there's something else that you guys want me to do another live for. I'd be happy to do it. This was totally impromptu, so thank you guys. Have an awesome afternoon. I'll probably be signing off kind of for the weekend because I'm going to be headed to Austin, and I'm super excited to get out of town, which is why I had to wax these arms, but now they're smooth and they're ready for sunscreen because this girl is white. Anyway, bye you guys.